Welcome to In the Cool of the Day and today's segment of People Connecting People. I'm your host, Ruth Pegaron. I have a very special guest today for the show, and my guest began her career in Washington, D.C. as an attorney. After practicing law for several years, she decided to follow her heart and founded a matchmaking company. She has a passion for soul connections and is dedicated to the principle that we are all deserving of love, and that there is someone out there for everyone. She has been in the business for over 35 years and is responsible for 82 marriages to date, along with hundreds of long-term relationships over the years. She has been featured in numerous publications, is a frequent public speaker, and has been a guest on public radio, several podcasts, and cable TV. In 2020, she released her book, Catch Me a Catch, Chronicles of a Modern-Day Matchmaker. So please welcome author, founder, and manager of Love by Leora, Leora Hoffman. Welcome.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And you're the reason I wore red today. It's all about love.
That's right. That's right.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
My life is dedicated to the pursuit of love.
Yes, and you're like a perfect person for it. So thank you so much for that, because it's a thing of the past that is not new to the world, if you will, but you've innovated it and made it a concept that people can now walk into and feel comfortable in a safe place to do it. So, but before we get into all of that, just tell us a little bit about you.
I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, okay.
And I moved down here in the early 80s. I have 2 children and now a 4-year-old grandson. I am married to my wonderful husband, Jim, who is a forensic psychologist.
Oh, wow, that must be interesting.
Oh, we have some interesting conversations.
Yeah, that must be interesting.
And I'm just absolutely thrilled to be able to do the kind of work that I love every day and that contributes so amazingly into people's lives.
Right, that's awesome. That is really awesome. And what kind of attorney were you?
I did several things within the field of law, but most recently I was a prosecutor for child protection cases in D.C. court.
Oh, that's another love.
That was, a real, mission of mercy in a way. Very intense work, very rewarding work. But I'm glad I have that chapter behind me because it can be very, very stressful.
Oh, yes, it can be. I mean, anything with children and nothing but doing something positive for them is hurtful.
Absolutely.
Children are so special.
Absolutely.
And you now have a grandchild, so that's good. Or you said one grandchild, so that's wonderful.
And he's the joy of my life.
Good. You going to hope for more?
Well, we'll see. It's not up to me.
It's not up to you. Right. You have some influence by saying what you want, but
exactly.
you got to depend on your children.
Exactly.
Right,
but if he's all I have, I'm delighted and thrilled.
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing a little bit of that. So now we'll get into what you do.
Okay.
All right. So just tell us, how did you get into matchmaking, though, first and foremost?
Well, it was interesting. I had not intended to do that. I was a lawyer, and I was home on maternity leave after having my second child. I was a little bored with my then government job, to be honest. And my sister called me from New York. She had been divorced and was single and told me that she had gone to a matchmaker on Madison Avenue and that it was a very exclusive and expensive service, and what should she do? She wanted my advice. So I said, well, that sounds like a wonderful idea for a new profession for me.
Right.
And she said, well, she's a therapist. And she said, well, what kind of crisis are you having with your career? And I said, well, never mind that. I said, I don't know of anyone in the D.C. community who's doing that work. And so I decided to look into it. I went to a consultant who helped me develop a business plan. At the time, I knew so many single people who were having real difficulty connecting. Like they were ships in the night, working all kinds of hours and unable to really meet people. And this was pre-internet.
Oh, wow.
So
you said 35 years ago? Yeah.
Right. The options were very limited at that time. And so I thought, given my passion for romance, given the business opportunity that I saw, and given the fact that I had 2 young children and I needed flexibility in my schedule, I thought it made perfect sense to go in that direction.
Oh, wow, it does. It did.
It did.
Yeah. So explain, what is matchmaking?
Matchmaking, for me, as I define it, because there are many ways that one can define it, but for me, it's helping people find love, pure and simple.
Pure and simple.
It's getting to know the people well enough so that I can really zero in on the kind of person who's going to meet their emotional needs. And that's what it's all about. It's about starting with a relationship and hopefully going the distance with that person. The way that I structure my business is by membership, and I have various levels and ways that people can be involved in my network. But ultimately, the goal is to find one meaningful, committed relationship to result from the process. Whether they define it as being just boyfriend-girlfriend, living together, being married, that's very, individually tailored, and depends
their
on
choices of what they want, even coming into it.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people that's just looking for companionship, I'm sure, or like you said, want a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a little bit more commitment.
Right.
And then others do want ultimately the marriage.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
But your goal, I like the way you say that, is just to help a person find love. That's just that, pure and simple.
That's what it's all about.
Not difficult.
Exactly. That's why I named my company Love by Leora.
Right.
Because that's what it is.
Now, coming into it, do the person define love, or do you help them define love? Like, some people might just not have a clue of what they're really looking for. Do you kind of help them find their definition of love?
Absolutely. People come in with usually a long wish list of things that they're looking for in a person. My philosophy has always been, let's talk about what's negotiable and what's non-negotiable. Because I start with the premise that nothing is going to be perfect. No one's going to get 100% of what they're looking for in another human being. It just doesn't happen that way. But let's talk about the things that are fundamental to your happiness. And that the other things should be a little bit more flexible. And so I help people sort that out, because often they don't really think about it when they come to me with their wish list. They just want, everything.
Right.
And so I help them, really figure that out. Based on their backgrounds, based on their relationship history, based on their goals.
So when they come to you I know you said 82 marriages, which was great. Like, what's the average time, and I know every case is probably different, but what has been the average time you've seen from when they join your matchmaking service to an actual marriage? What has been the average time?
Well, it varies from client to client. I've had people who, were with me for only 2 months, met the love of their life, and were married within a year.
Wow.
I do specialize in a bit of an older demographic, the 50-plus demographic, and they know when you're at that stage of life, if something's right and you have a future with someone, or if it's not. And so they're pretty much prepared to commit within a year, more or less.
Okay.
And in terms of my service, it really depends how it goes. Some people meet only 2 people, and that one of them becomes that right person. Some people can meet 10 people in a year, and it could take the whole year's membership for that right person to come along.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. So what is the difference between matchmaking and online dating?
Well, first and foremost, the personal touch, because I don't think there's any substitute for that. When somebody works with me, they're dealing with me from the initial phone call, through the intake process, through the dates, through the feedback, and really in a process designed to ultimately zero in on the one right person. So I'm a matchmaker, I'm not a dating service. So when somebody comes to me and says, for example, I'm looking for somebody between 50 and 60. If you went to a dating service, they would put that in their database, and they would produce all the eligible people between 50 and 60. But suppose Mr. Right or Ms. Right is 61. They'd never meet them in a dating service. But I know my people. And so I'm all about saying, well, I know you said this is your criteria, but can you be a little bit flexible in this regard or in that regard? And so because I know people so intimately, I'm able to recommend something that sometimes people can't envision for themselves.
Right. And I like that you said not a dating service. because a dating service probably wouldn't be what someone ultimately wanted really when they come to you. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, I mean, if people want to date a lot of different people, they're probably not the right candidate for my process.
Okay.
I'm really geared towards people who are ready to settle into that long-lasting relationship.
Right.
And so if they're looking for, say, a date a week, that's probably not realistic. And so, you know, online dating might be more appropriate for that kind of client. But the people who come to me have many times done that, have not had success with online dating and want an alternative. Or some people are very private, they don't want to go that route to begin with. And so they come for my discretion and for my experience and skills in doing this.
And when you look at matchmaking versus online dating, do you find that the quality of the dates are better typically, or is it the same profile of a person on each platform?
It's hard to say about online dating because it's so different.
It's so different.
I really pride myself on the quality of the people I introduce to one another. And I have information about people that when people go online, they don't have. For example, why they live in a particular place, what their background has been, what their preferences are. So it makes it really familiar and honest. Online dating, you know, you may have heard all the horror stories of people showing up, you know, with looking 20 years older than their picture.
Yes. That's usually the number one thing you hear, is that they just didn't look like their picture. They used a picture that was when they felt they looked the best.
Exactly.
Versus their current situation. But they know they're going to meet a person.
Right.
So
it's really self-sabotaging.
It's self-sabotaging. Yeah, exactly. It's self-sabotaging is a perfect way to say it. So that is always perplexing, but you're right. That wouldn't happen in your situation at all.
No, in fact, I insist that photos be within the last year.
Okay.
And I have very talented photographers who I work with as well when people don't have really good images, because images are important.
Images are important. What percentage of importance do you think it matters, that first look?
Oh, I think it's usually important.
Yeah.
Because attraction is quick.
It is quick.
You know soon if like, oh, this is somebody I could be interested in, or
Right.
I mean,
right.
You know pretty quickly.
Yes.
And so I want people to look like their pictures. And in fact, what I love hearing is that people said, oh, you're so much prettier than your picture.
Yes.
That's the best compliment one could give.
Yes. Picture didn't do you any justice. And you have a photographer, so if they send you a picture and it's just not right, or they say, oh, you know what, I haven't taken pictures in over a year, then you have a photographer on your team that will go and do that.
I have several different ones.
See, that's awesome.
And I match the client to the right photographer as well.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, well, it's time for a short break, so we're just going to have a short break. We will return after these important messages.
Losing weight's a lot harder than gaining it, but with every step, I lower my risk for type 2 diabetes and heart disease, and that makes every step very much worth the effort.
Learn how you can help stop diabetes. Visit checkupamerica.org or call 1-800-DIABETES.
All right. Welcome back. You're watching In the Cool of the Day, and today's segment of People Connecting People with my special guest, Leora Hoffman, author, founder, and manager of Love by Leora. Prior to the break, we were, just discussing a little bit about online dating versus in the pictures, which is awesome, and the photographers. Now I wanted to just go into a little bit about defining success a little bit and giving us an example or two of some successful matchmaking couples that are still together today.
Well, it's interesting. Success can be defined in a number of different ways. Some people define it as being married. I've had, as I said, 82 marriages to my credit. I'm very proud of that. But really, success I define as, are they involved in an exclusive relationship? Because what happens between them after that is really between them. And so I define success as they're in an exclusive relationship and hopefully falling in love.
Yes.
And as I said, that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
So interestingly, the very first two people I introduced as an experiment 35 years ago now fell in love in about 20 minutes, and they've been married for 33 years.
Wonderful.
They have 2 children together.
Wonderful.
And she became one of my closest friends.
Wow.
And I knew that this couple, even though they had very different backgrounds and the timing wasn't exactly right, I just had a very strong feeling that they would, A, be attracted to each other,
Mm-hmm.
B, relate to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to support each other because they both had significant challenges in their lives. And so she called me the day after the date and said, Leora, forget law, you have found your calling.
She was in love.
And I said, really? And what do you mean? Tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, let's put it this way. We sat on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial till 1 o'clock in the morning kissing.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
And it went from there.
Oh.
And I took that as a sign from the universe that I was meant to do this
Yes.
work.
Yeah, I was gonna say that had to be inspiring for you.
Totally.
Yes, 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 yes. That would have did it for me too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More recently, and especially given the challenges of COVID,
Mhm.
I introduced a couple in their 60s.
Mm-hmm.
We'll call them Karen and Greg. I don't use
Okay.
real names.
Right. Yep.
But she was divorced
Mhm.
in her early 60s. He was widowed. And he was ready to move forward, even though he had had a long and happy marriage. He had done his grieving, and he was ready to move forward. She had had a lot of challenges with a post-divorce relationship that was on and off and on and off, and very, very frustrating for her.
Mm-hmm.
So they were introduced to one another. Both of them were the first referrals that they received through me, and they also fell in love, but in an interesting way, because it was COVID, and they couldn't meet face-to-face. So they began with a Zoom date, which began with some more Zoom dates, which then went to a face-to-face meeting outside. And then he got really creative. He was very interested in her, and he wanted to romance her, but he really didn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
So a friend of his had a van, and he pulled up to her house with a van and had an entire gourmet restaurant set up in the back of the van.
Oh, wow.
And they drove to Annapolis and sat on the water and had this beautiful gourmet dinner on the water. And it went from there.
Oh, my goodness. Now, that was lovely. That was very romantic.
Very,
Oh,
very.
my goodness.
But, the good thing about their meeting and their courtship, so to speak, was that it couldn't happen instantly.
Mm-hmm.
They had to build slowly. They had to be on simmer for a while because they couldn't have physical contact with each other.
Right.
And I believe that helped really get them more and more excited and invested in the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And today they are living together. They've exchanged rings, and they are super in love.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. And you connected them.
Yeah.
And that was it a first date scenario for them, or first Zoom date that they knew, or they just continued?
Well,
and
they were
simmered, but they had a connection.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a connection, and they wanted to build on that. And they did it gradually, and I gave her some tricks to do while she was on the Zoom to get him more interested. Like, she has a beautiful figure, and on Zoom you can only see the person from
Yes.
the neck up.
Right.
So I said, well, excuse yourself during the Zoom and say you have to go get something, and stand up and walk across the room so he can see you full length. And that did the trick, because he was like, whoa.
Whoa, yes. And men are very, very visual.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that's just how they are, no matter what. They're just very visual.
That's true.
So it just makes a difference for them.
That's true. So I like to give people little hints, little tips to maximize success. And that worked.
That worked, yes, yes. So you mentioned earlier about demographics, and you said that a lot of your clients are 50 plus, and that's where you focus in. Do you ever have clients that's younger, or?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I take people of all ages,
Okay.
mostly 30 and on.
Okay.
The reason I specialize in an older demographic, and it's not exclusive,
Right.
but the age group since I've gotten older over the years, obviously,
Yes.
my population has aged with me. And I believe the 50 plus, including seniors, I do a lot of work in the senior community, are at a point in their lives where they are really able to maximize the experience of being in a relationship because they've built careers already, they've raised children. The heavy lifting of life is often behind them.
And
now,
partnership,
yes,
you need a partner for different reasons when you're doing the heavy lifting. Kids,
exactly.
yeah, career. Yeah.
And most people are financially stable enough to really invest in what's important to them. So they want to share that with a person, like travel, adventures. You know, I think it's just a great time of life to get together.
It is. It really is. And then a lot of people are single again, right? Did you find that in that demographic of 50 plus?
Absolutely.
So do you work with a lot of widows or just divorced, or what do you find?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I find, you know, I just have a small minority of people who have never been married, but usually they've had long-term relationships and they don't come to the table with a blank slate. Nobody does.
Nobody does, right.
So the divorced clients tend to have different issues. The widowed clients have somewhat different issues. And, you know, I work very hard to understand their emotional needs and what wounds they are recovering from so that I can spare them any further pain in trying to explore a new romantic relationship.
So in all of these different relationships that you've been a part of and bringing people together, what would you say you've learned a lot about?
Well, I'm an optimist and I'm a romantic.
Okay.
So I would say, first of all, it's never too late.
Right. Yep.
Also, it's about connection and not perfection. That's the key.
Oh, I like that. That's very nice. Say that one more time.
It's about connection, not perfection.
Yes, yes. Because I think people do want perfection at every age, right?
Well, you know, they like the idea of it,
Right.
but
right.
then it doesn't translate into reality, and then they get very frustrated.
Right.
So
So you help them up front understand that love is really a connection. It's not perfection.
Exactly.
Yeah, loving yourself could be more perfection.
Yes.
Getting satisfied there versus the next person. So that is awesome. You should keep that tagline.
I should have a bumper sticker on my car.
I was going to say, you need to have that. Yeah, that connection versus perfection. Because, you know, you do meet people and they say, oh, I want them 6 foot tall. You know, I want them to be handsome. You know, I know guys, I feel bad for shorter guys because they're like, oh, women always want taller guys. But no, they really don't. They just think they do.
Right.
And they want career and money and this type of things. But when you really get down to it, you can have all of that and be totally miserable because their heart is different. And we'll just say that way. Their heart or their ethics or different things are different. So if you look for connection versus the perfection of the physical, then you usually will get a better outcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Chemistry is important.
It is.
Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
It's critical.
Yes.
But it's not the only piece of the pie. You know, you've got to have chemistry. You've got to have mutual goals,
yes,
and similar values, in my opinion. And if you have all of that, that's a winning formula for success.
That is a very winning formula. And if you start with those first, that, like you said earlier, you start with just like, what do you have to have, and what is some optional things in a person, and I think some of those things do come to play for sure. So do you find a difference, though, with, you mentioned seniors, you work with seniors a lot. Do you find a difference in the senior versus the mid-age dating? Is there a big difference between the middle-age 50 person versus the 72 person?
Yes.
Of their interest or what they're looking for?
Well, you know, it's so great that people today are living longer, and so clients in their 70s and even 80s are very vital and active people. But they understand that it's about the present, and they want to make the most of the time that they have left. And they feel like, you know, finding love at that stage in life is just so precious, and willing to really invest in that direction, willing to make changes that they might not have made earlier in life, like relocating to another city for the right person, like selling a house, like, you know, major changes that they might have been reluctant to do earlier in life. And I think that, that's really rewarding for them to be able to say that they're, putting all of their resources into finding that and having the rest of their lives with that special person.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, that's real good. And I could see that change from 50 to 70 taking place. The house was a big deal.
Yeah.
At 50, a house is more important than when it's at 70.
Right.
It's like, I can let this go.
Exactly.
Right,
it's not about the physical space. It's about being together.
It's about being with somebody, companionship. You said travel, and just doing things with.
Right.
A lot of people, you get to a certain age too, you lose friends, and your circle of trusting people just starts to change.
Absolutely.
So having that one person, it does make a difference in connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So tell us, while we're wrapping up here, what is the formula for a successful match? Now, you did say, just know that it's never too late.
Right.
So I love that. Is there anything else that you can say?
I would say combine that all with a pinch of humor. Okay. Because there's nothing more bonding in a relationship than being able to laugh together. And it makes it so sweet. So all of those other things, are very, very important. But if you really don't find the same things funny and you really can't share a perspective in life, it makes it more challenging. Right. And so, I really encourage people to forego some of the other things if they really have that kind of connection with a person.
Yeah, that pinch of humor. I like it. All right, and we have 30 seconds. Tell us what's next for you.
I'm just going to keep doing it. Okay. It's my passion. I would do it even if I weren't getting paid for it. Oh, yeah, I just love getting people together. And so, I hope that I can do that well into old age, because matchmakers are known for being old. So
they are.
Actually,
they are.
That'll work for me.
Keep doing it. Yes, and I love the book. And I'm sure the book, we didn't talk much about it other than what you've been saying.
I wrote the book to give people a real perspective on what a matchmaker does. And it also is a very personal memoir of my own search for love and how it intersected with the business. So people get, to understand me as a person and also what it takes to be a matchmaker.
But thank you so much for being here. It's that time again. If you have any questions about today's segment, please see the information scrolling below. You've been watching In the Cool of the Day and today's segment of People Connecting People. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye-bye.